Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel where I read you guys amazing stories. Today the book I'm reading is titled The Wolven Mage. Finally the day Cirilla feared the most was here. Today was the day she was going to bring in her child into this chaotic world. A child that she was sure was special. A child that is birthed by love. Okay Ciri, you need to push. It's time to see this beautiful princess. Adela the midwife and also Ciri's trusted friend said to her. Ciri took in a deep breath and began to push. Growing up she was told that mages in training to be an oracle were never meant to bear children, because bearing a child meant sacrificing half of your life force, and if half of your life force was gone, then you would never become an oracle, and growing up she thought becoming an oracle was the only thing she wanted until she fell in love with Czar, the alpha of the Celestine Pack, a true alpha. From the original werewolf bloodline, Czar made her want more. He opened her eyes to something more greater than an oracle, motherhood, and even up till this moment as her life force drained with every time she pushed, she wouldn't trade it for anything. While Ciri pushed unknown to her, the weather changed. The cloud darkened like a heavy storm was coming, breeze blew in every direction, then the dark clouds turned red. Everyone across the villages witnessed the change of the weather, then a howling sound was heard and afterwards the cry of a child, and immediately the clouds cleared. It was almost like it didn't happen. It's a girl, Ciri, Adela said as she handed the child to her mother. With tears in her eyes, Ciri placed a kiss on her daughter's forehead, and almost immediately Czar entered the room. He heard the cry of his child. Even though it was the loudest cry he had ever heard, he couldn't wait to see his child and his beautiful Ciri. Both parents placed kisses on their daughter's forehead. Both Ciri and Czar felt complete, and whatever the consequences of bringing their child into this world was, they were ready to face it. She's ours, Czar, our Althea, Ciri said in tears. Yes, she's ours, Czar said and kissed his wife. 5 years later, Czar and Ciri successfully hid their child in the woods for 5 years. Althea grew up to be more powerful than they expected or imagined. As she grew up, her powers manifested. First at the age of 1 she shifted into her wolf form without breaking every bone in her body. At 2 everything she touched either grew or died depending on her mood. Her hair was as white as snow, very different from either of her parents' hair. So was her wolf form. Althea had 2 color eyes, one gray and the other ice blue. Even though she looked different, she had the Celestine Pack crest on her back as a true-blooded alpha would, just like her father. At 4 Ciri began to teach her daughter magic. Even though she still had many years to live, she just had a feeling that she needed to start teaching Althea at a young age. And even though Althea was just 4, she picked up really fast, and by 5 she was already doing little magic on her own. Amidst all the things, the war between the werewolves and the mages was going on, and a plot against Czar was brewing. His beta and best friend, who he confided in, was already rounding up members of the pack against him. Alistair, Czar's beta, made a pact with the mages to kill Ciri and the abomination they called a child, and so it was decided that on the night Czar visits his family, he and his wife and their abomination would be killed. As planned, on the fateful night when Czar visited Ciri and Althea, unknown to him he was being followed by both the mages and werewolves. After they had dinner, Ciri went outside to bring in the clothes she washed during the day. As she folded the clothes and placed them in the basket, she sensed a strong magic around her. Instinctively she built a magical barrier around the house, but it wasn't strong enough to keep them safe. So as fast as she could, she made her way back into the house to warn Czar. But before she could say anything, a magical force was wrapped around her that prevented her movement and speech. She whined in pain as the force began to draw out what was left of her life force. She stood there helpless as she watched Czar fight off the pack of wolves that attacked him. He fought with all his might, but they were just too many. His very own pack was known to be the strongest pack in the land, and even though he was their alpha, he couldn't fight them all. They eventually overpowered him with Alistair leading them. Ciri tried to break out of the painful magical grip that she was in, but the mage that held her captive was stronger than her. They knew she wasn't as powerful as she was anymore because she gave birth. That's why they knew to cast this magical spell on her. This was the mage's way of execution. They wrap you up in a life force magic and drain your life force until every form of magic in you dies out, which kills you in the end. And Ciri knew she wasn't getting out of it alive. Tears ran down her face as the pain increased by every second. Czar did everything he could to fight off his pack, but in the end they overpowered him. When he heard Ciri raise up a magical barrier around the house, he knew immediately that something was wrong. So as fast as he could, he dressed Althea up and packed a piece of bread and milk for her. He then instructed her to run as fast as she could into the forest. Even though he didn't know what the danger was, he had a feeling that this would be the last time he would kiss his daughter. He removed his necklace that had the Celestine crest as a pendant and wore it on her neck. He then placed a kiss on her forehead, then opened a secret back door and let Althea out. That was when the front door opened and he heard Ciri groan in pain.